She walked out of that courtroom free, but not because she was acquitted, but because she broke the system. Imagine a woman in an orange jumpsuit, with handcuffs on her wrists, calmly looking a corrupt cop in the eye and smiling. He thought he had apprehended another suspicious black woman. In fact, he put a Navy SEAL in the car, a former U.S. Navy Special Forces commander with clearance for some of the most classified operations in the world. This isn't just a story of innocence. It's a countdown to the fall of a system where one misplaced moment can destroy careers, reputations, and all the lies that underpin order. How? Simple. She knew what to do. And who should pay? The trial started as a drug case, ended as an investigation into massive falsification, racial profiling, and acquiescence within law enforcement. The question isn't how she won. It's how many others like her we just haven't heard from. How did one woman turn an accusation into a weapon against those who thought they were untouchable? See the story of Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair, not a victim, but a huntress. If you're ready to feel the power of truth, hear the voice of justice, and see how one woman changed the system, click, like, subscribe, and immerse yourself in this story until the very end. This isn't just a story. It's a challenge. It's a reminder that sometimes the loudest battles start with one quiet no. The red and blue lights blazed in her rearview mirror like a siren song of trouble. Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair, off-duty, unarmed, and dressed in a soft hoodie and jeans, pulled her matte black Dodge Charger to the side of Elmwood Avenue. It was late, almost midnight. The street was empty except for the occasional flicker of headlights in the distance. She remained calm, hands already placed on the wheel at 10 and 2, breathing steady, eyes forward. It wasn't her first traffic stop, but this one already felt different. The officer approached slowly, flashlight in hand, posture tall and commanding. He was white, early 40s, with a clean-shaven jaw and a name tag that read OFCJ, Harding. His face was unreadable, but something in his eyes sparked suspicion rather than service. He tapped the window. License and registration. She complied without a word, passing them to him with steady hands. He studied her documents longer than necessary, then peered inside her car. "You in a hurry tonight, ma'am?" "No, officer," Maya said evenly. "Is there a problem?" He sniffed the air theatrically. "Been drinking?" "No, sir." "Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Maya's gut tensed. She knew her rights, but this wasn't the time to flex them. At least not yet. She opened the door and stepped out. Her posture was straight, her breathing trained. Her eyes never left his. He had her sit on the curb while he searched her car. No probable cause. No warrant. But she let it play out. She knew the law, knew the game. She wasn't about to escalate things here, not when the deck was clearly stacked. 10 minutes later, he emerged holding a small bag of white powder between two gloved fingers. "Well, would you look at that," he said, turning toward his dash cam with performative delight. "Looks like we've got ourselves a party girl." Maya's jaw tightened. "That's not mine." Harding smirked. "Tell it to the judge." He slapped the cuffs on her wrists a little too tight, the click loud in the night. She didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't give him the satisfaction of fear. But as he read her rights, his voice smug and smooth, he had no idea who he was dealing with. No idea the kind of courtroom storm he had just invited. The fluorescent lights inside the precinct stung Maya's eyes as she was led through the back-end trance, cuffs still digging into her wrists. The concrete walls bore the same sterile indifference as every other police station she had seen in war-torn cities and coastal bases. But this was America. This was supposed to be home. And yet here she was, being processed like a common criminal while the real crime stood behind her, smug and unshakably confident. Officer Harding handed her over to a younger officer, who took her prints without saying a word. Maya noted the nervous glance the young man threw toward Harding, the subtle tension in his shoulders. He knew something was off, but he didn't speak. Her mugshot was snapped twice, thanks to a convenient camera glitch, before she was led to a holding cell. Harding lingered outside the bars, twirling a pin between his fingers. "Shame," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. "Pretty woman like you. Just couldn't keep your nose clean." Maya didn't respond. She sat down on the cold metal bench, slow and deliberate. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. She watched his reflection in the scratched plexiglass window of the cell. Watched how he straightened his back like a man who thought he'd won. Watched how he walked away whistling, like this was just another Tuesday night on the job. But she was already calculating. She knew the protocol he violated. She knew how his search was illegal, how his body cam had accidentally malfunctioned for the critical 2 minutes. She knew how the evidence had been planted, how the chain of custody was going to fall apart the second anyone with authority took a real look. What Harding didn't know, what no one in that precinct knew, was that Maya Sinclair had served 3 tours in Iraq, had led classified operations in Somalia, had once broken a fellow SEAL's arm for making a racist joke on base, and been commended by her CO for maintaining unit discipline. She wasn't just some black woman in a hoodie with a fast car. She was Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair, Navy SEAL, with a top-secret clearance and a direct line to more lawyers and military brass than Harding could imagine. But she wasn't going to make that call. Not yet. Because she wanted to see just how deep this hole they were digging would go. 2 days passed in the county jail. The cell was small, the cot lumpy, the food nearly inedible, but Maya had endured worse in Kandahar. She spent most of her time in silence, watching, listening, measuring. The other inmates gave her a wide berth. There was something in her bearing, the quiet confidence, the unspoken power in her eyes. Even the loudmouth in the cell across from hers lowered his voice when speaking near her. No one asked questions, and she didn't volunteer answers. When the guard finally came for her, his voice was clipped. "You're up. Court in 30. She was dressed in a drab orange jumpsuit, the cuffs back on her wrists, her boots replaced with thin rubber shoes. But her spine was still straight, her head still high. She moved like a woman with a mission, not a plea. At the courthouse, a weary public defender was assigned to her, a woman named Clara Hastings, mid-30s, glasses too large for her face, briefcase stuffed with manila folders. Clara didn't look up when she first sat beside Maya in the holding area outside the courtroom. "Okay, so the officer's report says he pulled you for erratic driving," she began, flipping through pages, and found a baggie of cocaine under the passenger seat. "You tested negative for substances, but the DA is pushing possession with intent. Says you had over 3 grams. They offered a deal, probation, a treatment program, and a sealed record in 5 years if you plead out." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm taking a plea for something I didn't do?" Clara finally looked at her. "Honestly, I've seen a lot of clients in denial. It's usually the better option." Maya's voice was calm but unflinching. "That officer planted the drugs. He had no reason to search. No warrant. No probable cause. He searched my vehicle without consent and claimed he smelled alcohol, a lie. I don't even drink." Clara gave a tired sigh. "We'll request the body cam footage, but there won't be any," Maya said, voice sharper now. "He disabled it. But there's a dash cam. Check the timestamp. Then pull surveillance from the gas station across the street, Shell Station, north side of Elmwood." Clara blinked. Something in the defendant's tone, calculated, confident, even commanding, made her pause. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who's been trained to notice everything," Maya said. "I don't need a deal. I need a courtroom. And I need that officer to take the stand under oath." Clara studied her. Slowly, she closed the folder. "All right," she said. "Let's go to war." Officer James Harding walked into the courtroom with his chest puffed out and his uniform crisp, like he was stepping onto a stage. He always enjoyed testifying. It was the part of the job that made him feel powerful. In court, he could weave a narrative, play the role of hero. Judges respected uniforms. Juries believed cops. In this case, this was easy. A black woman, a fast car, a baggie of coke. He'd told that story so many times it practically recited itself. He didn't recognize Maya in the courtroom. Not really. He saw her, of course, sitting beside that overworked public defender, quiet, composed, but he didn't see her. To him, she was just another name on a docket. Another urban woman in a hoodie who fit the profile. And even if she didn't, he'd make sure she did. He took the stand with a casual smirk, one leg crossed over the other, hand resting on his belt like it was instinct. The prosecutor walked him through his testimony, and Harding answered with polished ease. She was swerving slightly, looked like she might be intoxicated. "I initiated a stop for public safety. When I approached, I smelled alcohol and noticed slurred speech. I asked her to exit the vehicle, and upon inspecting the car, I located a small plastic bag beneath the front passenger seat." He paused for effect, then added, "The substance later tested positive for cocaine." The jury scribbled notes. The judge nodded. Everything was going smoothly. Harding felt in control. Then Clara Hastings stood up. "Officer Harding," she began with a polite smile, "you mentioned the defendant was swerving. Was this recorded on your dash cam?" "Yes, it should be." "Was that footage submitted into evidence?" "It was," he said confidently. She walked to the evidence monitor and tapped the screen. The video played. Harding's cruiser was parked behind Maya's car, already pulled over. No swerving, no erratic movement, just a smooth turn and a full stop. Clara cocked her head. Can you point out the moment she was swerving? Harding frowned slightly. Must have started recording late. I see. And your body cam, why wasn't that included? It malfunctioned, he said quickly. Clara held up a maintenance report. Your department's tech logs show your body cam was working when you clocked in. It wasn't reported broken until after the arrest. Harding's jaw tightened. The jury noticed. Now, Clara continued, you said the bag of cocaine was found under the front passenger seat? Yes. We subpoenaed surveillance footage from the Shell station on Elmwood. The defendant filled up her tank minutes before the stop. The footage clearly shows the car's interior, no sign of a bag. No one entered or exited the vehicle. Harding shifted in his seat. Sweat glistened near his collar. Clara stepped closer. Are you absolutely certain you found that bag where you said you did? Harding hesitated. Yes. No further questions, Clara said, and sat. Maya didn't move, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She just watched, eyes locked on Harding, like a hunter watching prey that had wandered into a trap of its own design. He still didn't know, but he would. After court adjourned for the day, Clara followed Maya into the narrow hallway outside the courtroom, her heels echoing off the tile. She was still gripping the folder tightly, her knuckles white with adrenaline. That was impressive, Clara said. But I have to ask, how did you know about the gas station footage? That kind of detail. Maya stopped and turned to face her. I've been trained to notice everything in my environment. Angles, light, movement, surveillance. Clara raised a brow. Military. Yes. Army. Maya looked her straight in the eye. Navy. SEAL. Clara blinked. Then blinked again. You're a SEAL? Lieutenant Commander. With clearances so high I can't even tell you what some of them are. The silence hung thick for a beat. Clara laughed, but it was a nervous, incredulous sound. Jesus. No offense, but I didn't expect that. You've been calm through this whole thing, like it didn't rattle you. It didn't, Maya replied. Not the jail. Not the courtroom. What rattles me is how often this happens to people without my training. Without my rank. Clara absorbed that, her face sobering. You're going to blow this open, aren't you? Maya gave a small, grim nod. He picked the wrong woman. Back in the precinct that evening, Harding sat in his office, a half-eaten takeout box beside him. Something about today's cross-examination gnawed at him. He replayed his testimony in his head, searching for cracks, but there had been none. His story had been airtight. Standard. Textbook. Except, she hadn't flinched. Not once. And that lawyer. She wasn't the usual kind of public defender who begged for leniency and folded fast. She'd come in sharp. Prepared. Backed by surveillance footage, tech logs, timestamps. Who the hell was this woman? Harding opened his terminal and typed in her name, Maya Sinclair. No middle name, no aliases. Just clean and simple. He ran a quick background check through local law enforcement systems. Nothing. Not even a parking ticket. Clean record. Almost too clean. Frowning, he clicked into a federal database he wasn't exactly authorized to access. He entered her name again. Access restricted. Security clearance required. Harding froze. What the hell? He tried again, using a workaround, tapping into archived DoD personnel listings from prior years. One result flashed briefly before the screen booted him back out. Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair, Naval Special Warfare Command, top secret clearance. Harding's heart dropped into his stomach. Oh, no, he whispered. She wasn't just some woman with a nice car and a sharp tongue. He had planted drugs on a Navy SEAL. And now the dominoes were going to fall. Harding didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, chest tight. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that name flash across the screen again. Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair. The words Naval Special Warfare clanged in his brain like a fire alarm. He'd been in law enforcement long enough to know that people with special warfare credentials don't just disappear quietly. They bring fire with them. At 6 a.m., he drove to the station early, hair uncombed, tie askew, skipping his usual coffee. In the break room, he found Sergeant McDonough pouring his first cup. Harding hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Hey, Sarge, that woman I arrested the other night. Maya Sinclair. You run her record. McDonough looked up over his mug. Public defender asked. Nothing came up clean. Why? Harding chewed the inside of his cheek. Something feels off. I mean, she talks like a Fed. Stared me down like she was reading a battlefield. I think she's more than she says. McDonough frowned. You saying she's dangerous? No, Harding lied. Just saying, if someone's connected, we need to know. But McDonough didn't bite. We do our jobs by the book, Harding. If you're worried about how the stop looks on review, that's your paperwork to clean up. You crossed your T's, didn't you? Harding nodded slowly. Yeah, sure. But he was lying again. Because he knew the moment that bag of cocaine touched her floor mat, he had committed a felony. And now he was up against someone trained to eliminate threats. At the Pentagon, 2 floors underground, Commander Sarah Lennox entered a secure room lined with dark servers and classified briefings. A direct request from Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair had just hit her encrypted inbox. Subject: misconduct by local law enforcement, immediate legal assistance requested. Attached were the details of the case, court transcripts, timestamps, and a formal request to unseal Maya's status in the interest of mounting a defense. But Maya hadn't just sent it to Lennox. She'd CC'd Rear Admiral Monroe and the Navy JAG Corps. Within minutes, the matter escalated to a priority alert. Calls were made. Clearances were verified. And a special liaison from the Department of Defense was dispatched to Maya's public defender, under strict instruction to keep Maya's identity sealed unless absolutely necessary. Back at the courthouse, Clara Hastings received the call at 9:12 a.m. She stepped out of her office, her heart pounding. Yes, this is Clara. Ms. Hastings, this is Lieutenant Tom Alvarez, DoD Liaison to Naval Special Warfare. I'm calling regarding your client, Maya Sinclair. You need to be briefed in person immediately. Clara blinked. Why? Because your client's not just innocent. She's government gold. And the man who framed her? He doesn't know what kind of hurricane he's unleashed. As Clara grabbed her bag and rushed down the hallway, she finally understood why Maya had waited. Why she hadn't called it in from jail. Why she let it unfold in court. She wasn't just defending herself. She was setting the trap. Clara Hastings sat rigid at the far end of a secure conference room in the federal building, gripping a cup of untouched coffee. Across from her sat Lieutenant Tom Alvarez, flanked by 2 other individuals, one from the Judge Advocate General's office and another in a black suit who hadn't introduced himself. His presence alone was explanation enough. Intelligence. Probably ONI. Maybe even NCIS. The briefing packet in front of her bore Maya's full military record, redacted in parts but still thick with citations, commendations, and mission codes that meant little to the average lawyer but spoke volumes to those who knew what they meant. Clara skimmed through it. 3 deployments. Bronze Star with Valor. Joint Special Operations Command rotation. A letter of commendation signed by a 4-star admiral. She's not just a SEAL, Alvarez said quietly. She's Tier 1. Black Ops. Clara's mouth went dry. Jesus Christ. No. Lieutenant Commander Sinclair, Alvarez corrected. And she's held off going public, for now, because she wanted to give the legal system a chance to do the right thing. But she's running out of patience. Clara looked up. So what exactly do you want me to do? The man in the black suit finally spoke. Keep doing what you're doing. Build the case. Tear Harding apart in court. But be advised, this goes deeper than a rogue cop. We have reason to believe Harding may be part of a network that's been profiling and targeting civilians across several precincts. Clara's heart dropped. You think this is systemic? We think it's coordinated. Clara closed the folder slowly, carefully, her mind racing. What had started as a standard possession case was now wrapped in classified threads and a potential civil rights nightmare. Back at the precinct, Officer Harding sat behind his desk, bleary-eyed and paranoid. He'd spent the morning scrubbing files, cleaning out his texts, deleting old photos from his phone. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. That someone knew. When he passed the hallway window, he thought he saw an unmarked car parked across the street. It hadn't moved for over an hour. He called dispatch. You got a car staked out on Elm in Lexington? Nope, came the reply. He hung up. Harding turned back toward his desk, only to find a sealed manila envelope sitting on his chair. No name. No stamp. Just a symbol on the front, a trident piercing a skull. His blood went cold. He snatched the envelope and ripped it open. Inside was a single page, a printed still from the gas station surveillance footage showing Maya calmly refueling her car. No drugs. No bag. Clean interior. Beneath it, someone had typed 4 words. We see everything, James. His hand shook as he crumpled the paper and stuffed it in the trash. But the message had been delivered. He wasn't just being watched. He was being hunted. At exactly 0400 hours, a man arrived at Maya Sinclair's quiet townhouse on the east side of town. He didn't knock, didn't ring the bell. He waited under the porch light with the kind of stillness only taught in one place, the team's. When Maya opened the door, she didn't look surprised. She stepped back to let him in. "Didn't think you'd come in person," she said. The man, tall, lean, with steel-gray eyes and a scar down his neck, nodded once. "You lit up a lot of radar, Sinclair." Harding did. "I'm just holding the mirror." He looked around the room. Spartan. Tidy. Tactical gear in the corner beneath an American flag folded in a triangle. A loaded Glock on the kitchen counter. "You sure you want to go through civilian courts for this? The Navy could pull you out now. Quiet fix. Sweep it up." "No," Maya said flatly. "I want this on the record. I want the cameras rolling when he lies again. I want the jury to see his hands shake." The man, call sign Harker, retired team leader from SEAL Team 6, grunted his approval. "You always were more patient than the rest of us." Maya's gaze turned sharp. "This isn't just about Harding. It's about who let him believe he could do this and get away with it. He's not the only one. I want whoever's protecting him to feel the heat. I want this to go all the way up." Harker leaned on the counter, folding his arms. "You realize this could blow back on you, right? You go public, they'll come for your record. The ops you led, the lives you've taken. Some of that's not clean." She nodded. "None of it is. But I didn't come back to hide. I came back to serve. And this," she tapped a folder labeled Harding, "pattern behavior. This is a domestic battlefield. And I know how to fight on one of those." Harker studied her a long moment, then pulled a small flash drive from his coat. "This is everything the military scraped on Harding since your file pinged DOD. Disciplinary history. Complaints swept under the rug. Civil suits buried under NDAs. One from a woman in Westlake who's willing to testify. She's scared, but she's watching you." Maya took the drive with a grim nod. "She won't be alone." As Harker turned to leave, he paused at the doorway. "You sure you don't want one of us sitting in the gallery when he takes the stand?" Maya cracked a cold, quiet smile. "Don't worry. He'll know he's not alone." The door closed behind him, but the silence in the room was electric now, charged with purpose. Maya sat down at her desk, slid the drive into her encrypted laptop, and began reading through Harding's secrets. Behind her, on a small shelf above her medals, was a framed quote from Admiral McCraven. "If you want to change the world, be ready to get your hands dirty." And Maya Sinclair's hands were already in the dirt. The courthouse was unusually tense that morning. Not outwardly. People still milled about. Clerks still shuffled files. Bailiffs joked over lukewarm coffee. But there was a subtle crackle in the air, the kind of static that rolls in before a storm breaks open. Trial day 1 had officially begun, and Clara Hastings was already seated at the defense table, reviewing notes. She wasn't wearing her usual rushed ponytail or oversized glasses. Today, she looked sharp, focused, precise. She had something most public defenders rarely had in court: confidence in the truth, and a client who could back it with fire. Maya walked in silently, still dressed modestly in civilian attire, her posture perfect, her eyes locked forward. If anyone in the courtroom had any idea what kind of battlefield experience she carried in her bones, they might have stood when she entered. Harding, already seated at the prosecution table, stiffened. He hadn't expected her to look so composed. He'd imagined she'd come broken, timid, grasping for a deal. Instead, she moved like someone who could walk through fire and not blink. It unsettled him. The jury filed in. 12 faces. A mix of age, gender, and skin color. A few eyes lingered on Maya. A few on Harding. No one knew yet who to believe. The judge, a straight-laced man named Judge Wycliffe, called the court to order. The prosecution opened with a steady stream of familiar talking points. Officer Harding, decorated public servant, found contraband during a routine stop. Body cam malfunctioned. Regrettable, but not unheard of. Substance tested positive. The defense would try to make it about procedure, but the fact remained: drugs were found. Then Clara rose, cool and deliberate. "This case isn't about a bag of powder. It's about abuse of power, about a pattern of deception, and about how even those sworn to protect can become the threat." The courtroom stirred. Clara didn't mention Maya's background yet. That was her ace. She needed the lies to unravel on their own first. And today, her goal was to show the cracks. She called the department's forensic technician to the stand. A man named Doyle, mild-mannered and a little unsure. Under cross-examination, Clara asked, "Can you confirm the time the evidence was submitted into the chain of custody?" "Yes. According to the log, 10:44 p.m. And Officer Harding's stop occurred at 10:23 p.m.? "Yes." "Is it standard to take over 20 minutes to log evidence after a routine possession stop?" Doyle hesitated. "It's on the longer side, yes." "Did you handle the bag personally?" "No. It was already sealed when I received it." "Sealed by Harding?" "Yes." "Did you test it for fingerprints?" "No, not unless there's a request." "Did Officer Harding request one?" "No." The jury was listening now, very closely. Clara turned and nodded. No further questions. As the witness stepped down, Clara caught Harding's eye across the room. For the first time, his smug veneer was showing signs of strain. Back in her seat, Maya leaned in and whispered to Clara, "He's starting to sweat." Clara smirked. "Good. Let's turn up the heat tomorrow." Because what the jury didn't know yet, what no one outside of a few key people knew, was that day two would bring a surprise witness. And that witness wore a uniform decorated with stars. The second day of trial started like any other, but by 9:30 a.m., something was different. A row of sharply dressed men and women filled the back of the courtroom, some in dark suits, others in navy dress uniforms with shining brass. They entered quietly, but their presence sent a ripple through the room. Even the bailiff, who'd seen plenty in his 20 years of court security, straightened up. In the front row sat Rear Admiral Cassandra Monroe, her service ribbons gleaming beneath her navy jacket, for stars on each shoulder. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her rank spoke for her. Officer Harding didn't see her at first. He was too busy reviewing his testimony with the prosecutor, still trying to piece together what part of his narrative might have slipped the day before. But the moment he looked up and caught sight of the Admiral, his jaw went slack. "Oh shit," he muttered. Judge Wycliffe noticed the new attendees and raised an eyebrow. "I see we have some distinguished guests today." Clara stood. "Yes, Your Honor. With the court's permission, the defense would like to call a character witness. Rear Admiral Cassandra Monroe." The judge leaned back. "Admiral Monroe. That's a name I haven't heard in this courtroom." The Admiral rose and approached the stand with the measured grace of a woman who had led fleets and faced foreign threats most Americans would never hear about. She took the oath with a firm voice, then sat. Clara walked to the center of the courtroom. "Admiral Monroe, can you please state your relationship to the defendant?" "I've known Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair for over 8 years. I have overseen her service directly through multiple assignments, including joint operations with Naval Special Warfare Command." A hush fell over the room. Harding turned visibly pale. "She's active duty?" the prosecutor blurted, flustered. Clara turned. "She is. With top-secret clearance and command history in classified combat zones. Her credentials were verified through DoD channels." The judge's eyes widened slightly, then returned to neutral. "Proceed." Clara continued. "Admiral, what can you tell the court about Lieutenant Commander Sinclair's integrity? She is one of the most disciplined, ethical, and mission-driven officers I've ever had the privilege of serving with. Her judgment in high-stakes environments has saved lives, American and civilian alike. She doesn't make mistakes. And she certainly doesn't lie. Would it be in her character to possess or distribute narcotics?" Admiral Monroe's stare was ice-cold. "Absolutely not. She leads anti-narcotic interdiction teams. She's helped dismantle international trafficking cells. The idea that she would even touch street drugs is not only absurd, it's offensive." Clara nodded. "Thank you, Admiral. No further questions." The prosecution hesitated. They didn't even attempt to cross. The room was too tense, the silence too thick. When Monroe stepped down, she paused next to Maya and gave her a slight nod, quiet, professional, but charged with respect. For the jury, the trial was no longer just about a traffic stop. This was bigger now. This was about whether a decorated Navy SEAL had been profiled, framed, and humiliated by a local officer abusing power. Harding's leg bounced under the table. He whispered to the prosecutor, "We need to settle. Now." But Clara saw it. She leaned toward Maya and murmured, "Now he's looking for the exits." Maya shook her head, voice calm. "No exits. We finished this." The prosecution spent most of the morning trying to recover lost ground. They brought in an analyst from the crime lab, a departmental supervisor, and even a fellow patrol officer who worked with Harding regularly. All were meant to bolster his credibility, to paint him as by the book, reliable, dedicated to the community. But after Admiral Monroe's testimony, the courtroom's mood had shifted like a tide pulled by gravity. Each witness struggled to sound convincing under cross. Clara's rhythm was surgical: build trust, extract details, isolate inconsistencies, then snap, pull the floor out. By the time they broke for lunch, 3 witnesses had contradicted Harding's original statement in subtle but significant ways. One of them, when asked if he ever saw Harding turn off his body cam mid-shift, said softly, only when he said he needed a break. The jury caught that. After recess, Clara made her boldest move yet. The defense calls Officer James Harding to the stand. There was a beat of hesitation. Harding's lawyer leaned in, whispered something, but he waved it off. His pride was his fatal flaw. He stood tall, trying to summon control again, and walked slowly to the witness box. He swore in. Clara began casually. Officer Harding, how long have you served? 16 years, he said flatly. And in that time, how many traffic stops have you made? Thousands. How many have resulted in felony drug charges? Maybe a few dozen. Clara nodded. And how many of those involved body cam malfunctions? Harding stiffened. A couple. She raised an eyebrow. Would you consider that unusual? I wouldn't say so. Equipment fails. It happens. Clara stepped closer. In the stop of Lieutenant Commander Maya Sinclair, you claimed you smelled alcohol. Yet the arrest report shows no field sobriety test was administered. Why? Harding hesitated. She didn't exhibit enough impairment to warrant one. You testified you smelled alcohol and slurred speech. But that wasn't enough? I trusted my instincts. Instincts that overrode procedure? He didn't answer. Clara stepped back. Let's talk about the search. You said she gave consent. Yes. Did she sign anything? No. Is there audio proof of verbal consent? No. So we're taking your word that she agreed? Yes. And in that unauthorized search, you found the bag of cocaine. That's correct. Under the front passenger seat? Yes. Clara tapped a file on the desk. Forensics show the only fingerprints on that bag were yours. None belonging to Lieutenant Commander Sinclair. I was wearing gloves. I bagged the evidence. But hers should still have been present if she touched it. Silence. Your Honor, may I admit Defense Exhibit 14? The judge nodded. The screen lit up with high-definition footage from the Shell gas station, Maya at the pump, interior of the vehicle clearly visible. No bag on the seat. No suspicious behavior. Nothing to suggest drugs. Clara turned back to Harding. Explain to the court how this footage, captured moments before your stop, shows no contraband in the vehicle, yet you found some minutes later? Harding opened his mouth. Closed it. A beat passed. He looked toward the jury, then toward the door, as if he could will the whole thing away. Clara stepped in with her final blow. Officer Harding, do you know what perjury is? The courtroom went still. I do, he said quietly. I suggest you remember that. Because this is under oath. And we are far from done. The silence after Clara's last question was thunderous. Harding sat motionless, face flushed, his jaw twitching. The courtroom, once full of murmurs and shifting bodies, had gone deathly still, dozens of eyes pinned to the officer now exposed under the unforgiving light of truth. Judge Wycliffe cleared his throat. Officer, do you wish to respond? Harding's voice came out thin, brittle. I stand by my report. Clara tilted her head. Even after the dashcam showed no erratic driving, the gas station footage showed no drugs, your gloves were the only source of fingerprints on the evidence bag, and your body cam just happened to stop working? I don't control the equipment. Funny, Clara said, tapping her pen against the stand. Because the internal tech report shows the device was manually powered off mid-shift, not malfunctioned. In fact, you filed malfunction claims 5 times this year, all during arrests involving black defendants. Gasps. Audible ones. Clara pounced. Let's review those incidents. In every one of them, you claimed erratic behavior, claimed you smelled alcohol or drugs, and in every one, your body cam failed. But there's a pattern, Officer Harding, a trail of disappearing footage and manipulated narratives. You planted drugs in Lieutenant Commander Sinclair's car, didn't you? Objection, the prosecutor barked, rising from his seat. That's a criminal accusation. Sustained, Judge Wycliffe said, frowning. Counselor, tread carefully. Clara nodded. Withdrawn. Let me rephrase. She walked to the jury, letting her voice soften. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It whispers. In contradictions. In missing files. In convenient equipment failures. And in the quiet dignity of someone like my client, who could have pulled rank, called the Pentagon, ended this before it started. But she didn't. Because she trusted you. Because she believes in the justice system. She turned back to Harding, who now visibly trembled. "Officer, last question. Did you plant that bag?" Harding swallowed, looked at the prosecutor, looked at the judge, then back at Maya. Her eyes met his. Calm, piercing. I don't remember." Clara let the words hang in the air like an admission. No further questions. Harding stepped down like a man walking off a cliff, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his own lies. As he returned to his seat, the prosecutor refused to meet his gaze. Behind the defense table, Maya remained still. Her jaw was tight, her hands folded neatly, but something in her eyes shifted. The war was almost over. But she wasn't done yet. Because it wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about exposing every name he'd tried to bury before hers. That evening, Clara sat alone in her office with the door locked and the lights low. She was going through a USB drive that had arrived in an unmarked envelope earlier that day. No return address, no note. Just one word scribbled on the label: Harding. She clicked through the folders and found exactly what she feared, and more than she expected. Audio recordings, redacted incident reports, copies of internal affairs complaints that had never made it past Harding's desk. Most disturbing of all were the witness statements, buried testimonies from women of color, mostly traffic stops or loitering arrests. All with the same story: sudden escalation, intimidation, mysterious evidence found after the fact, and the same excuse: camera malfunction. There were at least 8 victims, maybe more. One file stood out. A woman named Retold Daniels, 23 years old, arrested 2 years prior for alleged cocaine possession. The complaint was dismissed without trial, but the damage had been done. A week after her release, she'd lost her job at a daycare. Clara read the transcript of her original complaint. "He told me I looked like trouble, told me no one would believe me. I tried to get out of the car, and he grabbed me by the arm. I never saw where the drugs came from. I never touched them. But he said if I ran my mouth, I'd regret it." The file had been marked closed, lack of evidence. Clara's throat tightened. This wasn't just about Maya anymore. This was a pattern, a system that allowed Harding to operate in the shadows. But now, those shadows had a name, a face, a rank. The next morning, Clara entered the courtroom with a fire in her eyes. She carried the drive in one hand, copies of the new evidence in the other. Maya turned to her quietly and asked, "More fuel?" "An inferno," Clara replied. Before the court was called into session, she approached the bench with both attorneys for a sidebar. Judge Wycliffe scanned the files as his expression shifted from boredom to deep concern. "You're moving to admit this?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. It directly establishes a pattern of behavior, a pattern that undermines Officer Harding's credibility and reveals ongoing misconduct." The prosecutor objected, of course, claimed the material was prejudicial, unverified, claimed it was a smear campaign. But the judge had seen enough. He allowed the motion to proceed, limited in scope for now, but enough to rock the courtroom. Clara called Retold Daniels to the stand. She was older now, cautious, her voice shaking slightly at first. But as Clara guided her through the testimony, she grew stronger. She described her arrest in detail, how the officer's tone changed when she questioned him, how he seemed to know no one would believe her. "I didn't know who to go to. I didn't even file a civil suit. I just wanted it to go away," Retold said, her voice raw. Clara stepped forward, gently. "And today, why did you agree to testify?" "Because I saw her on the news. Maya, I saw someone fighting back. And I thought maybe, finally, someone like me could matter." The jury didn't look away. And Harding? He stared straight ahead, dead silent, as if his entire world had finally gone still. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the creak of the leather chairs as the jury filed back in. 3 full days of testimony, dozens of exhibits, one witness who wore 4 stars on her shoulders, and the damning testimony of Retold Daniels, followed by 2 more women who, after seeing her courage, had come forward at the last minute. Judge Wycliffe had allowed brief statements under oath. Harding's lawyer had objected to each one, overruled every time. The case had long since shifted from possession with intent to a referendum on systemic abuse, betrayal of public trust, and the weaponization of the badge. Officer Harding hadn't testified again. His attorney had quietly withdrawn plans for rebuttal. No closing statement could patch that ship. Clara stood, calm as ever, but Maya could feel her pulse thudding beneath the table. She reached over and placed a hand on her attorney's. Clara flinched slightly, then nodded in gratitude. Maya wasn't just her client anymore. She was her cause. The jury foreman stood. We, the jury, in the matter of the state versus Maya Sinclair, find the defendant. A pause. Maya held her breath. Harding's face was pale. The prosecutor looked at the floor. Not guilty on all charges. Gasps. Then silence. Then a wave of murmurs that quickly gave way to the judge's gavel striking wood. Order, Judge Wycliffe barked. Order in the court. He turned to Maya. Lieutenant CMDR. Sinclair, you are free to go. This court thanks you for your composure and trust in this process. Maya stood slowly. The room seemed to part for her, like soldiers standing at attention. She nodded to the judge with quiet dignity, then turned to Clara, who stood beside her with glassy eyes and a smile trying not to shake. I told you we'd finish it, Maya whispered. You didn't just finish it, Clara said, voice thick. You broke it open. But it wasn't over. As the courtroom emptied, 2 federal agents approached Harding, who was still seated, sweating and visibly trembling. They presented a sealed indictment, one that had been prepared in quiet coordination with the Navy, the Department of Justice, and several watchdog agencies. Charges included falsifying evidence, perjury, unlawful search and seizure, civil rights violations under color of law, and obstruction of justice. He didn't even resist. They cuffed him in the same way he had cuffed Maya. Only this time, no one clapped him on the back. No one said, "Good work." No one even looked him in the eye. As they walked him past Maya, she didn't move. She didn't gloat. She just met his gaze one last time, steady, quiet, and unbroken. He flinched. Outside, reporters swarmed. Maya spoke only one sentence to the press before stepping into the waiting black SUV. This wasn't just about me. This was about everyone they thought no one would fight for. And then she was gone. Not hiding, but already preparing for the next battlefield. 3 months later, the headlines had shifted, but the aftershocks of the state versus Maya Sinclair were still being felt across the country. Officer Harding was awaiting trial in federal court, denied bail due to obstruction risks. In a stunning turn, the DA's office launched a full audit of all cases Harding had been involved in over the last decade. 17 wrongful arrests had already been flagged for review. 5 convictions vacated. 2 civil lawsuits filed. More on the way. A class action investigation was opened into racial profiling and body cam tampering within the department. The chief of police, who had originally backed Harding during the arrest, resigned in disgrace after it emerged that he had buried internal complaints from lower-ranking officers. One of those officers, a young rookie named Jordan Ng, went public with a statement. I watched him bend the rules and thought I couldn't speak. I was wrong. Lieutenant Commander Sinclair gave me the courage to say something. Maya never went back to anonymity. That wasn't her path anymore. After the trial, she was approached by the Pentagon for a high-profile role in the Naval Inspector General's office, oversight, ethics, and internal investigation. She accepted. But she also did something no one expected. She started speaking publicly. Not often. Not for headlines. But where it mattered, community groups, law schools, rookie police academies. She stood before audiences that were quiet at first, unsure how to receive a woman who had walked both sides of the power line. And then she told them the truth. Not just her truth, but the stories of Rochelle Daniels and every other name buried beneath years of silence and indifference. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She told them what it meant to be trained to defend your country, only to come home and be criminalized in your own neighborhood. Justice, she said once during a speech at Howard University, isn't a finish line. It's a road we lay with every case we refuse to ignore. Every story we drag into the light. When asked by a student if she regretted not revealing her SEAL status sooner, she smiled, calm and confident. If I had, it would have just been about me. The headlines would have said Navy SEAL falsely arrested. But I needed people to see what happens when you don't have a badge or a rank to protect you. When you're just another black woman behind the wheel. That moment went viral. Not because it was flashy, but because it was undeniable. And in the corner of that lecture hall, a quiet young woman in a hoodie wiped her eyes and whispered, "That could have been me." Maya heard her. She always did. Because that's who she fought for. And would continue to fight for quietly, relentlessly, and without ever needing applause.